The Matrix is real. It's a real thing. It's a system, a simulated system that we all live under. And most of us are just not even aware of it. It's like a box that we're all in, and it pits us against them, and it treats some people differently and better than others. And in order to break free, you have to do certain things. And in this podcast, Dr. Elizabeth Philipose is going to show us how. And I got to say, I don't see the world the same now after our interview. Really blew my mind.
We're really trained to believe that we're powerless.
Yes. How do you break free? How do you kind of get out of the matrix?
It is a different dimension that they come in, right? Every generation.
This is the Bounce Back Generation podcast, where we explore different aspects of building resilience in today's changing and challenging times. We're going to talk about power today, how to break free from the dominant paradigms that mask our sense of self and tell us we aren't good enough, not deserving, or not ready for greatness. We can see the matrix. We can break free of it and regain our true, authentic power. I'm Jennifer Dillon. Dr. Elizabeth Philipose has been a decolonial feminist educator in universities in 2 countries for over 20 years. She's trained as a movement chaplain, spiritual therapist, energy healer, and coach. She facilitates whole soul creativity, a meditative community to unleash divine creativity for a more and just and inclusive world. Stay tuned after the podcast for a special guided meditation she created just for us. Let me start by asking you how you got into this field.
You know, where I'm a kid of immigrants from India, and where we migrated to, I was the only one like me, and so I grew up in this, town, a situation where I felt the pain of being excluded or being othered. It was a very constant experience growing up. And I would get relief when we traveled to India and be with family or whatever. But so I always found it very confusing because my inside was pretty clear that I'm okay. My home life gave me a very positive sense of who I am, but the external world just seemed rough. And so when I went to college, it wasn't in classes, it was some of the people that I met that were in a feminist reading group together. And so I started learning about feminism and learning about the analysis, right, of structures and systems and how power operates. And I started to realize, this isn't actually personal to me. It's quite impersonal. And so the other moments of relief I got is when we traveled to the United States and I saw Black people. And we'd go to cities like Chicago or Detroit, and not just saw them, but that they were very friendly with me, like that I would find a kind of common energy.
Are there different kinds of power? And specifically, is there like a personal power or a group power, or do they play off of each other?
We are powerful creators, even if what we're creating is negative, even if what we're creating is a sense of being helpless or victimized, right? It's coming from some inner belief system. And when we recognize that we are powerful creators and that we are part of creating the collective, creating the institutions, creating the world that we see, right? That we're agents of this world. When we see that, then we can be more conscious in how we direct our power. Because we're really trained to believe that we're powerless, right? We're trained in helplessness and victimization.
Like, how are you creating? What is the mechanism? Because people will say, I didn't create this poverty that I'm living in. I was born into it and I don't know how to get out of it. And how can you tell me that this is mine and I made this?
Yes, I did not create my poverty by myself, but I exist in a culture of poverty consciousness, right? And that poverty consciousness that's collective in our world is very much how capitalism operates. Poverty consciousness is the basis of the capitalist system that says there's not enough to go around.
Mhm.
right? And so therefore, you will need to compete. You will need to struggle. You will need to hoard. You will need to
Mhm.
accumulate, right?
Mhm.
The idea of getting more and more and more and more, right, is really driven by a sense of poverty. So how does that manifest? Well, it manifests in institutions that function this way, right? That keep us competing, that keep us begging, that instill in us this idea that we got to work until our cortisol rates are through the roof, right? And I see this in young people, 20 somethings, they're very ambitious, who are already suffering stress related diseases
Yes.
because of the way that that story is told and individualized. Like, and that's a real root of a lot of our suffering, is the thought that we are here alone, and that we got to scramble for our own well-being. And when we fail because of our failure. And when we succeed because of our success. But listen, we can look at all of the successful people in the world, successful, say money, right, and possessions and political influence, all of them come from somebody else's wealth.
Yes. Yes.
All of the wealth that's created, right? We talk about the United States as the wealthiest country on the planet. It's wealthy through the exploitation and appropriation of somebody else's stuff. That is the history of colonialism. So we have to start to demystify these
Yes.
stories that are told, because the stories are not just out here, they're in here. And it's devastating to think, right, that the number in my bank account is the equivalent of my value as a living being.
Yeah.
Right?
One of my favorite jokes that I kind of say whenever I see someone, who's a billionaire or who's achieved a lot in the world is this quote that I won't mention who said it, but it's someone who was being questioned by the Senate before their ascendancy to the Supreme Court. And he basically said, I deserve to be on the Supreme Court because I worked my ass off, right? As if the people who don't get there didn't work that hard
Right.
themselves. And if you look at this person's past, you see that there was privilege in their birth, privilege in their ability to go to school, privilege in, so yes, I nothing against working hard. We all need to work hard. But to assume that your hard work is what got you there, ignoring those factors that you talked about, is really out of line. And I want to say that what you're talking about when you talk about power is being able to put on maybe some glasses that you see the world through this power lens, or you take off the glasses and you see it through this kind of uh, lack lens. Does that kind of break it down in a way?
Yeah, definitely. We are the embodiments of the power relations of our society. There's two bits of news there. Like, the first bit of news is when we're unconscious, that's the source of pain. When we're not awake or we don't have the glasses on, right? We think it's us. We think it's us that's running these programs of our fear and unworthiness. The good news, the good part of that, is the minute that we put on the glasses, the minute that we become aware that we are the embodiments of a world of messaging that is actually not in our favor, right? Then we become the sites of activism.
Mhm.
We are the terrain, right, of awakening to our own selves, our own true selves. I always think of that as good news, because when you think about all of the ways that power is operating, right, in this whole colonial paradigm, if you think about it, and how are we going to change the world, it seems so out of our, capacity. But if you say, no, actually, it's in here, and here's where I can start to unravel that it becomes much more a place of agency. Yeah.
So that is incredible power then, because you can be someone who's an activist and say, gosh, I wish this system would change. I wish this system of racism would change, or capitalism would change, or wars and conflicts would change. And what you're saying is you can wish for that, but you're not going to change it out there. You change it in here first, and now you're different.
Yes.
If you're listening to this and you were to say, I want to get out of this mentality, this kind of what we can call colonial mentality, even though you may not be the one colonized, you are still being colonized in many ways.
Yes.
How do you break free? How do you kind of get out of the matrix?
Yes. So, just to say, like, a colonial consciousness, right, includes the idea of normal and abnormal, right?
Mm.
Of being the right way and the wrong way. That got institutionalized in the sort of European project, right, of colonizing the world, and also creating order at home, containing workers and getting them to work hard. And I always
Or
say,
getting women to have babies.
that's right.
Mhm.
That's right. So, yes, so the idea of a binary system of gender is a colonial concept, right? That there's only one way, or, a few ways to be male and a few ways to be female. There's only, certain ways to be sexual. There's only certain ways to be fulfill your gender, do your gender well, right? That's colonial thinking also. The idea of poverty in nature, scarcity, consciousness, capitalism is a colonial invention, right? And so that too, if you're operating with that, you're colonized, right? Because the fact is, nature is abundant. Nature never stops creating. Nature never stops pouring out its goodness. There's no scarcity in nature. It's invented. The same to think that there is a reality, a biological reality to the construction of races, right? That's also a colonial invention, right? That skin color or nose or hair or whatever it is an indicator of your social value. So all those things are part of a colonial context. So, or a consciousness. So, how do you start to unravel it? It's a lot of self-reflection on where do those things live in me, right? And things that get coded as low self-esteem, for instance, have a racial component, have a gendered component, right? Because even if you're part of a privileged population, say like you're men, right, that have, relative privilege over women as a group, given this binary gender system and patriarchal ideas, right, that you're still limited and prevented from being something truthful, right? And so it's like when we're prevented from being our true selves is where we suffer a lot. Reflect on where power lives in me. And I think that's why I think knowledge is revolutionary, is because when you understand it came from somewhere else and there's a history to it, we can locate, in history, the 1800s, we can locate the conscious invention of heterosexuality as an institution.
So someone somewhere sat down and said, I'm going to create these categories, this caste system. I'm going to establish some people are better than others. Why would they do that?
Yeah. It's all about power and domination and control. It's a sense of superiority that even before encounter, that Europeans had this idea of being superior. And so like the first act of international law, for instance, was papal. It was in 1493, and the Pope divided up non-Christendom. So what they considered non-Christendom, right? The Pope divided up non-Christendom between Spain and Portugal and said, go out and, do what you want. This is before they've had any encounter with anybody else, really. This is just a sense of their God-given
Mm-hmm.
right
Mm-hmm.
to reap the bounty. Uh,
Yeah.
mhm.
And it's, I mean, it's kind of a good way to think about it, maybe, is kind of a science fiction idea that what if we were to go out as Earth and say, we are more special than anyone out there in any planet. We're going to send out our spaceships and we're going to take over what they have because we have established that we are the greatest, right?
Yes,
That kind of thinking. And for some people, I mean, for me, that feels very um, unintelligent. But I think what you're saying is that there's a consciousness that that's how you gain power. You get power, you take it, you assume it, you establish rules around it. So if
yes,
you look at it that way, then it makes a lot of sense. Here's another question that I think comes up sometimes, that it feels confusing or maybe ironic, that some of the ways in which we learn our personal power is by establishing, I am Indian, or I'm a woman, or, and you do take that identity on in order to build your own sense of personal power. So
yes.
how do you match that up with the idea that we want to release some of those expectations and those structures that are built around those identities?
Yes. Yeah. So, that's the dilemma that's set up in those institutions that determined the hierarchies of humanity and normal and abnormal and all of that. We're subjected to it, and then we're subjects of that. This is how we're um, allowed to act politically.
Mm-hmm.
Right. And so it's a kind of a system that's put us in our place, right? So that when we seek power, it will be as our gender,
Mm-hmm.
as our racial category, and so everybody has a proper place. It's just that it's on a hierarchy.
Yeah, I see. So it's like you have to break that barrier around it by standing up and saying, "Yes, I'm a woman, but I'm not going to be held to your ideas of what it means to be a woman," or and so
Yes.
on with, right.
Yes,
Yeah.
yeah. Well, because the thing is, none of it is in our favor. And
Mhm.
I know I'm aware that people will say, this is how I have survived as an Asian American woman making, my claim, right, on power. But we have to, yes, okay, I can have compassion for that. And we have to recognize it's making my claim on power as it is now.
Mhm.
It's not a futuristic thought, right, about transformation. It's actually a conservative thought about maintaining the system just as it is. It just keeps reproducing those
Yeah.
dynamics, right?
Right.
And we're on this grid, right, on this hierarchy. And so today it's Asian Americans, tomorrow it's Muslims, yesterday it's Africans, right? It's just
Right.
like, it's just moving people around. That's the thing that keeps us, I think, anchored to um, to a power that does not serve us. That I'm going to say this too: it's not sustainable.
Mhm. I think one of the most empowering ideas that I think I see people recognizing is, if you take away that person's power, you're eventually going to take away mine. So in order to, like, if I wanted to protect LGBTQ person, for example, I would look at that as, if you can't be who you are, then I won't be able to be who I am in my own world, as a woman, or as, mixed race person or whatever. I want to go back to the idea of, again, kind of, how do you manifest the vision that you want for how to be in this new power paradigm, and for yourself personally?
Yeah, right. Um, so on one hand, I think people are doing it already by not, the newer people on the planet are less invested in those structures and systems and divisions and gender and all that, right? They're less invested as a generation,
Mm-hmm.
I think. And so people are already manifesting different kinds of relationships. They're already having a different sense of self. It is a
Right.
different dimension that they come in, right? Every generation is an evolution of the previous one because, because the previous one developed their consciousness.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
And it doesn't take 100%. Consciousness is exponential. So it's like maybe 10%, 11% of people, right, shift the paradigm.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. So I think people are already living in different ways, but in that personal kind of manifestation, I think it's really important for us to find a different anchor of our value that's not given by the world. So to remember, when we were birthed at first in our early days, we felt pretty good about being ourselves.
Mm-hmm.
We weren't criticizing our chubby thighs or, wishing our hair was different or, so like to go back to this is Sonia Renee Taylor. She calls it radical self-love. To go back to the place we were, our original love, when we knew that we were perfect and there wasn't an opposite to that. And there wasn't a way to fail. There wasn't a way to go wrong. We just were. And that is still in us. That is our original sense of self. We need an anchor that's not given by the world. So that, you could also think of that radical self-love. In the international human rights system, we talk about inherent dignity.
Mm-hmm.
That is by birth. Before birth, we come into this existence already equipped. Inherent dignity, I think of as wholeness. All of our parts fit together perfectly to make me, me, and you, and we're completely not the same thing. That we are uniquely whole. And to, remember that, to find it in us where that exists. There's another way to say it is our soulful selves,
Mm-hmm.
right? Our soulful selves are prior to birth on this planet, and we will take it with us when we go. And there's something true about us that's truer than anything that the world can say about us. There's that part of us that doesn't get disturbed, that isn't harmed, right? That is pristine and whole as it ever was, right? So, that's maybe speaking to spiritual practice, that's speaking to meditation, right? And that's why meditation matters, is you're turning your attention away from the world, which is so demanding and full of deception and swindle and lies. You're
Right.
turning your attention away from all of that and listening, listening to something that's real and true inside, right? You don't even have to know what you're doing just to turn within and to be connected. That's strength, that's
Yeah.
power. And that's a lasting kind of foundation so that you can walk through the world of harm and not be devastated by it. You see it, you recognize it, right? You've got your wisdom, you've got your discernment. You can see racism and sexism and understand it when it's happening, but it doesn't cut you,
Mm-hmm.
right, to the very core of who you think you are, right?
Mm-hmm.
There's a buffer.
Mm-hmm.
And so I think it's so important to encourage people to know something greater about themselves. It's what I love about teaching decolonial feminism. I think a core of that teaching is that we are more than the world tells us. We are more than the world tells
Yes.
us, right? And it's the moreness. That's an inner strength that nobody can take away from us.
Would you say to someone who says, my earliest and only deepest, longest memory that I have is neglect or abuse or not being treated well? I've never felt that moment of
Yeah.
that shining, beautiful self, that deeper self.
I would say it's in there,
Mhm.
somewhere. Um, and then just to watch somebody else, right? So observe how toddlers act, right? Watch babies as they discover their limbs. It's important, to have a sense that we're connected so that you can feel the experience, right, of others as yours too, right? When you see somebody else feeling pleasure or experiencing calm or sharing an act of kindness, right, we have mirror neurons, and our mirror neurons act as though this is my experience too, right? So even if it's not a mental memory, you want to get the memory in your system. And if it takes, observing how children are, right, to not a mental memory, but to take you back to something that's in you already. You see, that's a way to cultivate it. Yeah.
Yeah. Can you just briefly describe what a mirror neuron is?
The way that our brains function, right, is like when I experience pain, there's a certain circuitry that happens in my brain that's messaging my nervous system, and that's the experience of pain. When I see that you're experiencing pain, that circuitry is activated in me as though it's happening to me. It's not the same intensity. It won't be the same intensity, but that's what they refer to as mirror neurons, is the ability we have, our connection with each other, that sees something happening to someone else, and our system fires as though it's happening to us.
Thank you so much. I have one very simple question to ask that we ask of all of our guests. And that is, can you give a shout out to someone who made a difference for you when you were growing up?
Well, so many, angels along the way, but I'll say it's Mrs. Gill, my typing teacher in high school, who always advocated for me, even when it wasn't clear that I should be advocated for. She was just a constant elder, friend to me. Yeah, she still is, actually. We're still in contact in a way through social media. I haven't seen her in decades, but.
So, as we wrap it up, I'm wondering if you would be open to doing a maybe a guided meditation for anyone who's listening who wants to start understanding how to look at themselves differently, how to get into that unique, beautiful self that you've been talking about, and they say, I don't know how to do that. Is there maybe something? And then if you can, we can record it, then maybe that's something that they can, refer back to and start their practice in doing that work.
Sure, we could do that.
Stay tuned after the podcast for a special guided meditation Dr. Philipose created just for us. Thank you for listening, and thank you to Dr. Philipose for giving us a masterclass in power and understanding the matrix and the grid that we're in and how to break free. Please follow us on our YouTube channel at bbgtv.org or visit our website, bbgtv.org. We deliver all of our services free to young people in California and whoever finds us online. If you would like to support our work, you can donate at bbgtv.org/donation. Thank you for joining us. Next time, we'll be talking to someone who's found a way to create his own unique career, defying the traditional college to career track. He followed his passion while also making sure he's able to make a good living. Find out how he wakes up every day excited for work. Next time on the Bounce Back Generation podcast.
Yeah, so I just invite you to turn your attention inward. And if you're in a place where you feel comfortable to close your eyes, that's the easiest way to turn inward, to cut the external stimulation. And just let your gaze go in. And you're going to encounter lots of thoughts and words and this and that. That's okay. Just let yourself go in, because beneath that, there's other things. And you just give yourself a moment to arrive here. So, whatever energy that you've been distributing in the world today or this week, or just allowing all of the energy to settle. And it's like, can imagine just some sparkly dust all just coming to rest all around you, letting all your parts arrive here. And then start to notice your breath wherever it is in your body, not trying to change it or judge it. You're just noticing, where is my breath? Just recognizing that this breath has been breathing you all day, whether you noticed it or not. Just noticing the inhale. Maybe you hear it in the back of your throat. You feel something rise in your torso. And the exhale, maybe it sounds different in the back of your throat. You feel the temperature on your nostrils. Feel what softens as you exhale. And let the exhale just be long. So you get all the breath out. And then inhale again. And as you're inhaling, just allowing that inhale to slow down a bit. It slows down anyways, just because you notice it. And hear it again in the back of your throat. Feel it on your nostrils. And maybe as you exhale this time, more softens, more lets go. Just allow it to just release, surrender to that exhale. And then this time, as you're inhaling, let that inhale drop into your belly. Don't force it, just allowing it to just drop in a little more to your belly so that eventually your belly fills up with breath. And your ribs open and your chest rises and your throat opens all the way to the top of your head. And then exhale and exhale and exhale and exhale until there's no more breath left in you. Fully exhale. And this time, as you're inhaling, maybe your belly fills up a little more. And as much as you can, while you're sitting, just let your breath fill up that belly. Keep your breath in your belly, which helps to keep your nervous system in a relaxed state. Gives your nervous system in rest and digest, so you're able to just process everything that has come through you and assimilate the things you need and eliminate the things you don't. And now, just as you're breathing, notice your feet on the ground, if that's where they are. Notice the bottom of your feet and whatever surface is touching you. And just start to scan up this body, connecting with each part of you. Connect with the bottom of your feet and your ankles and your shins and your calves and your knees. And then as you're scanning up, just say a little thank you. Thank you to the work that this body does for you to move you through space and gravity. Notice your quadriceps, your hamstrings, your buttocks, your hips, and feel the surface underneath you. And as you're feeling that surface, just let your body go. Let your weight descend into the supports underneath you, the supports all around you. Let yourself surrender. to everything that is supporting you. And notice your belly and soften your belly, soften your lower back. Whatever gripping is happening anywhere that you notice, just gently let go, let go, let go. Let your ribs hang, let your chest be open with the breath, and you might stretch a little bit your chest, push it out like a proud bird, and let that energy of your heart move. Your heart is the most potent energy of your entire system. That energy is meant to move. And notice your throat, maybe swallow a couple times, soften your jaw, soften the tongue in your mouth. Roll your eyes up as though you're looking out the top of your head. Give your eyes a break. Maybe there's a tension behind your eyes. Just send the breath there and let your scalp melt. Let your brow soften, like in the cartoons, like when you're wiping the worry from your brow. Let your arms be heavy. Your hands turn toward the sky. Just soft, everything's being held. So you can let go. And then receive a breath from the bottom of your feet to the top of your head. And exhale from the top of your head to the bottom of your feet. And find a easy rhythm for your breath. Connecting with your belly if you can with that breath. And allowing yourself to drop in a little deeper, going beyond the words and thoughts, going beyond opinions and judgments, dropping in. There's a part of you that has never been harmed, that has never been hurt, that has never been injured. It's a part of you that is at perfect peace, undisturbed and undisturbable. Dropping in and dropping in and dropping into this part of you that is never uncertain, that is a perfect love, not just love of self, just love, this part of you that is given by nature, given by design, as your divine inheritance. No matter how much static there is on the line, no matter how much the world invades your inner sanctuary, this part of you is pristine, whole, and always here whenever you find your way in. And so breathe into this peace. Imagine this little part of you, it's actually the bigger part of you. Imagine that with each breath you take, this part of you glows, it lights up. This part of you grows, that there's this growing ember of light in you with each breath that you take. See it in your mind's eye. Feel it there in the midst of you. Imagine that you are this huge ball of energy, much bigger than this body, much greater than this mind. This entire field of light and consciousness that extends 30 feet around you and above you and below you. It's you, the more of you. It's invisible, but it's truer than anything else. And so allow this light of you to keep growing, filling up your whole body, filling up your whole field, filling up the entire room that you're seated. And in your mind's eye, that light just grows and expands and exceeds anything that we see in the physical. Your physical is the tip of the iceberg. You are so much more than this, so much more than the world tells you. And so receive one more breath as you receive this inhale. Let it fill up as big as you can become in this light and energy that you are, 100% energy. And then exhale, just surrendering to your greater self. And you can bow your head to your heart and press your palms together, bringing everything together in your palms. And just give yourself a moment of appreciation. Appreciate yourself for sitting today. Appreciate yourself for extending beyond your previous self. And whenever you're ready, you can come back to the room. Bring as much peace as you can with you.